Working. There we go. My name is Josie Burkhart. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to make strawberry jam and sourdough bread. And we're also going to learn a little bit about canning and preserving. We're going to can the strawberry jam once we're done with it. So I've been making strawberry jam specifically with my grandmother since I was a kid. So she, at the time, lived in Louisiana. She lived in New Orleans. And she would come up every summer and bring Louisiana strawberries during the summer. We can't get strawberries near as good in New Jersey, where I'm from. And we would make jam together. So she taught me how to do this. I actually have some examples of jam I've made with her. These two are strawberry and this is some blueberry jam. So first, we're going to start with our strawberries. I've already cut all of the tops off of them and washed them. So the difference between jam, jelly, and preserves is the size of the fruit in it. So jam, what we're making today is the entire fruit blended up. It's everything in smaller pieces, and we use pectin and sugar to make it into a jam consistency. Jelly is just the fruit juice. So you blend it and then strain it, and you get fruit juice out of that, pectin, sugar, and you get jelly. And then preserves is whole pieces of fruit in fruit juice suspended. So to get started, we're going to need 6 cups of blended strawberries. So we're just going to start by blending them up. And you can really make jam, jelly, or preserves out of any fruit that you want. It depends on the seasonality. Like I said, it's best when the Louisiana strawberries are in season because they taste the best. But I made blueberry, blackberry, peach, apple, really anything. The strawberry is my favorite though. It's a classic. And you can flavor it however you want, add herbs. I like strawberry basil is one of my go-tos, like an extra flavoring to it. So we're just gonna blend this until the pieces of fruit are as big as you want. I like them pretty small. I like it blended as much as I can. I don't know if y'all can see that right there. And I'm going to get 6 cups out of this. Just about there. And what actually makes the jam is pectin. So I use Sure-Gel powdered pectin. A lot of people use liquid pectin. It says it works the same. I've never had success with liquid pectin. I like the powder. It works every single time. So the pectin actually reacts with the sugar. That's what makes it seize up and turn into a jam. So first we're going to start by adding to our flame just all of the strawberries that we just blended up. This entire package of pectin. So according to the Sure-Gel company, 6 cups of blended fruit and this entire 1.75 ounce package of pectin is what's going to give you the jam consistency that you're looking for. And then I also add a knob of butter. It's for flavor, but it also helps to keep the foam of the fruit while it's cooking down, so it doesn't foam up as much. I'm just going to turn this on like low to medium heat because we're getting this mixture up to a rolling boil that cannot be stirred down. That's important for the chemical reaction that happens. Now, the jam that my grandmother makes is the best jam I've ever had in my life, and this will not be as good because I'm not using her grandmother's wooden spoon that has been making jam in our family for over 50 years. It's just not going to taste the same. It's science. So I'm combining this all together, and like I said, it's going to get cooked down. It's going to change color drastically, and I want it to a boil that as I'm doing this, you still see roaring bubbles. And I'm going to hand this over to my lovely assistant so you don't have to watch me stir fruit for about 20 minutes. And while we're doing that, I'm going to move over and make some sourdough for you. Yes?
Before you start on that,
absolutely.
Did you say there was a special kind of butter that you put in there?
No, it's normal butter. All it's doing is keeping the foam down on. So like if I didn't put the butter in there, it would foam up a lot. It's harder to see if it's boiling as much. And when you fill your jars, it's like you have to skim all of that off. But it also helps with flavor. It gives it a little above buttery flavor. Yes? Unsalted. You can add salt to it. I actually normally add salt at the end just because I like with that sweetness. But it doesn't mess with the science of it setting it all, so that's completely up to you. Yes?
And does having butter in there affect how long the jars last, like the shelf life?
No, so I'm going to show, once we get there, I'm going to show you how you can. Large amounts of dairy, you're not supposed to can because it will, but the amount of sugar that's in this jam is going to keep it preserved for the, like, federal guidelines say up to a year. I've had jam, like one of these jams is from 2023. But the federal guidelines say once you can it, it's up to a year. So I'm going to get started on our sourdough. So in this other jar that I have the coffee filter over, that's my sourdough starter that I started at. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you say how much sugar you put in there?
So I haven't added the sugar yet. We add the sugar once this gets up to that boil. Yes. And it's going to be 4 cups of sugar to the 6 cups of fruit. I know that seems like a lot of sugar, but it's what makes it taste good and it's what makes that chemical reaction happen. So I started this starter at the beginning of the semester. A sourdough starter is where your yeast comes from in your sourdough. So there's no added like active yeast, dry active yeast, anything like that. I've been cultivating my own yeast technically since the beginning. So it's actually just, you start with equal amounts of flour and water. You let that sit for 24 hours. And then every day for about a week, you feed it, meaning you mix equal amounts of flour and water and an equal amount of your pre-made starter, and it will feed on that flour and water and start cultivating the yeast bacteria. So I fed this morning, and it's at its peak about 4 to 6 hours later when it doubles in size. That's when the yeast in it is most active. So to start off, our very first step is adding our starter. So this is about 80 grams of my active starter at its peak that I'm going to add to my bowl. You see how it stretches? That's all of that yeast in there. That's what it's supposed to look like. And when a starter is hungry, it's going to smell like alcohol. It's going to smell kind of fermented. It's not going to smell good. That's how you know it's hungry. And when it's ready to be used, it smells like yeast. It smells like bread, things like that. I'm going to add 250 grams of room temperature water. And this is a Danish dough whisk. So it helps to mix the starter without incorporating so much air, and actually the way that it's rounded makes it so the dough doesn't stick and it kind of just falls off. But you can also like chop into it if that makes any sense. So I'm just dissolving my starter in the water. How are we looking over there, Jacob?
We're looking good.
And I'm gonna, until it gets about foamy like that and it's all dissolved. And then I'm gonna add 350 grams of bread flour. So this is high gluten flour, not all-purpose flour. It's gonna have a higher amount of gluten because that's what it needs to get that springy texture in the crumb of the sourdough. So I'm gonna add all of that. And with this first step, I'm just mixing it until it's combined. I'm not doing any folds, anything like that. There's a lot of time in between every step of a sourdough because that gluten needs to rest and that yeast needs time to develop. So I'm just doing this until combined, until all of the flour isn't loose like that. And like I said, this whisk, everything just kind of falls off of it, but I can also chop into the flour. Like if I were to use a normal whisk, it would all get gunked in there. It took me about 3 tries of my starter to make sure that it was mature and ready to be used for today. Sourdough is not for the faint of heart. So once it looks a shaggy dough like that, just barely mixed together, you're going to put this to the side, and it needs to rest for 30 minutes to allow that gluten that you just activated to rest and relax. So I'm going to put this to the side. And 30 minutes later, look at that. I have the next step ready to go. So I'm going to put on some gloves, and this is the pre-shaping step. So I did to this exactly what I just showed you. The only difference is this has been sitting. This is, like, once again, activating that gluten. Yes?
When you let it rest, cover it?
Yes, cover it with plastic wrap for most of the steps and just at room temperature. The only step that's gonna go in the fridge is the very last one before baking. So I'm just gonna, in the bowl, it's a little violent. I'm gonna do it so y'all can see. I'm shaping this into a ball while also stretching it. So it's gonna get that smoother texture. You saw how the one that I just mixed was very shaggy, like disconnected from each other. So this is gonna give it its smooth texture on top. I'm making the ball, it's a pre-shaping. So this step should only take about a minute. It's just activating that gluten again. Every time we activate the gluten, we're developing the crumb within the sourdough. So that springy texture with the air bubbles in it that you know, that's what this is trying to, helping it achieve. So I'm gonna do this movement for about a minute, like I said, until I get a ball that's smooth and springy like that. And then that's gonna go back in its bowl. I'm gonna take my gloves off and re-don it with its plastic wrap. Now this, for the second step, it needs, oh yes. How long does the starter last? As long as you keep feeding it. So it requires daily feeding. You can do it about 2 times a day if you really want it that active. For baking, you need to do it feed it about 4 to 6 hours before you're ready to bake with it. But it can sit at room temperature as long as you feed it at least once a day. And if you're not going to be able to feed it once a day, it can last for up to a week without being fed in the fridge. But so it'll be alive as long as you feed it. I think they actually found a starter that was like 1,000 years old that they were able to get the bacteria from and recultivate it. So yeah. So this needs to sit for 45 minutes before our next step. And would you look at that? It's been 45 minutes. So now I'm going to do what's called stretch and folds. So once again, I'm doing different things, but it's all achieving the same thing. It's all developing that crumb, making layers so that those air bubbles. Yes? That's a great question. I was supposed to add it on that last step. So when you make that ball, you add about 10 grams of salt and it'll incorporate itself once you make the ball. The bread that you have has salt in it, I promise, that y'all will be eating. So I'm wearing gloves for sanitary purposes for y'all, but you can do this step with bare hands as long as they're a little wet. So this is what's called stretch and fold. So I'm gonna take the end of my dough and just lift it up and then stretch it and fold it over itself like that. And then I'm gonna turn my bowl, 45 degrees, like a clock, and do that 4 times until each of the 4 sides of, like if you think of a square, each of the 4 sides of the dough is stretched over itself. If you think of like puff pastry or like any other laminated doughs, this is kind of doing a similar thing, making those layers within the dough so that the crumb can be springy and airy. And you can see how it builds on top of itself and now it's a different shape like that. So that was called stretch and folds. It's gonna don that plastic wrap and that needs to sit for another 45 minutes. But I must have a time machine or something. Because
She doesn't.
it has been another 45 minutes. And now we're doing something called coil folds. That's gonna be where with both hands, again, a little wet, I'm gonna lift from the middle until I lift the whole thing out of the bowl. See how stretchy that is now? And then I'm just gonna do this movement and let it fall back onto itself. And then I'm gonna do that 4 times as well, turning the bowl each time. The second time you do it, it's not gonna be as stretched out, so you have to kind of let it hang like that. And then you're gonna get it back up under itself. I'm gonna wet my hands a little bit more. I'm gonna do that 2 more times. You see how smooth it's getting on the top every time I do it and every step? That's a great sign. And then now I have a little burrito. And that's 4 times. And that you're gonna do twice. So this, I'm gonna put plastic wrap over this one. It's gonna be another 45 minutes. And you're gonna do those same steps, those same coil folds another time. And then that has to sit. Oh, and then after that one is when you start your bulk fermentation. This is where the majority of the rising is going to be taking place. It's going to be sitting at room temperature with plastic wrap, and you want it to double in size after your second set of coil folds. This is where the yeast is really gonna feed on that flour, that salt, that water that you added in there, and it's gonna double in size. And with my handy dandy time machine once again, we have doubled in size our dough. So this is when I'm gonna start the final shaping and getting it ready for its cold fermentation. So this is gonna go in the fridge. I have a little bit of table flour. This is bread flour. You can use AP flour for this. That doesn't really matter. It's just to make it a little less sticky. Look at how much that's risen. You can see the bubbles and everything. That's a sign that the yeast in your starter is working. So I'm going to get this onto my bench. And I'm going to use what's called a bench scraper, which is this thing. And because I'm using a round Banneton basket, which is where it's going to do its cold fermentation, I'm doing a method to make the shape round called the push and pull method. So I'm literally grabbing it and pushing it and pulling it towards me to where eventually it's going to make a circle. I'm going to flour up my bench scraper. So I'm attempting to grab the edges of the dough and pushing it under itself to shape. And I can go whatever direction feels right. Whatever part's sticking out, you can see how it's not rising, but like building upon itself again. And I want the top to be smooth because when I flip it into the Banneton basket, it's going to be opposite of when it comes out. So I'm going to have like seam up, the bottom up in the Banneton basket because when it's done with its cold fermentation, I'm going to flip it back onto the parchment paper for it to bake. So I want the good side down in the Banneton basket. And I'm just going to do this until it's a shape that I want. You're really not going to see as much stickiness as I'm seeing. But you're just going to keep going around and pushing it under itself until we get that nice ball. I'm going to flour my Banneton basket because this is just a piece of cloth. It'll stick to it if you don't flour it. So I'm just coating the whole thing and just a little bit of flour. And I'm going to take this and do my best to just like that. And you see the seam of it is at the top because our next step I'm going to end up flipping it back onto a piece of parchment paper. So this is not going to get covered with plastic wrap. I'm just going to grab a kitchen towel to cover it loosely like that to protect it from debris and things like that. And this is going to go into refrigeration for 12 hours. Sourdough takes a long time, a lot of commitment. So this is where the gluten's going to rest. We've been doing a lot to it and it's going to rise just a little bit more. You're not going to see anything like doubling in size again. We did that with our cold fermentation. So don't worry if it looks the same size coming out of the fridge. Yes?
You need this boiling water is free.
Boiling a little bit more. You want the whole center to be bubbled. Like we're seeing right now, we're just seeing some bubbles around the edges. It's not even really making itself towards the center. We want the whole thing to be bubbling even while he's stirring. I'm going to turn the flame up a little bit. All right. And with our final step, we have sitting for 12 hours in the fridge, our final dough. So I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper and just flip it on. So that's okay. It might not look as good, but you can also, if it's a little flat like that, do that same push and pull method to push some of it under itself. You can avoid the weird, like flappy parts like that by flouring your Banneton basket a little bit more so it doesn't stick like you saw. So I'm just going to do this slightly to tuck it up under itself, but then that's ready to go in the oven. So I have a preheated oven to 450 degrees. And I have a Dutch oven in there. I promise I'm not burning myself, y'all. This isn't actually on. But the Dutch oven also needs to be preheated. So when you turn your oven on, just go ahead and put the Dutch oven in there so that it can get hot. That way you're not trying to bring the cast iron or any other, like an enamel Dutch oven works also. You're not trying to bring that up to temp while you're baking your loaf. So you're just going to take this whole thing and pop it in there like that. Now, to develop the crust on sourdough, steam helps. So if you don't have a fancy steam injector oven like we do in our baking kitchen, to your hot Dutch oven, you just add a couple pieces of ice. And then the first 20 minutes is going to be with the lid on, and that's going to trap the steam in the Dutch oven with it and develop its crust. So it's going to go in the oven. You're going to bring it down to 425 degrees for the actual baking, and it goes with the lid on for 20 minutes and the lid off for another 20 minutes. And then you're going to have your sourdough bread.
The camera's not on you.
I'm not on camera?
No.
Ah,
Walk over.
where'd it go?
Right there.
Hello. You're gonna have your sourdough bread. How's it looking, Jacob?
So close by.
Yeah. So we got a bunch of bubbles around the edges, and we're working towards the middle of it. And I've got some bigger pieces of fruit in this, which I like. So actually, an interesting thing too, I also have an example for some marmalade with you. So I was talking about that pectin, and that's what sets up the jam. Marmalade does not need added artificial pectin. Pectin is found naturally in most fruits, and citrus fruits, like the satsumas that the satsuma marmalade works, has so much natural pectin within the peel and the pith of it that blending the entire fruit and just cooking it down for hours and hours sets it up firmer than any jam with artificial pectin in it. So just a fun fact for you, if you make citrus, it's called a marmalade, and it has no artificial pectin in it. All right, so that's going to be about what we're looking for. Even when he's stirring, I'm going to take that from you, Jacob. Thank you. Even when we're stirring, we're not seeing any like wavering of the boiling and the bubbling, and it's changed color significantly. It was almost white because those strawberries weren't exactly fresh. So I'm going to add my 4 cups of sugar. And next to me, Jacob, you see that timer that I brought up? Oh, hi. Next to me, I have a timer ready set for 1 minute. So I'm going to get all the sugar mixed in there. And as soon as it comes back up to that same boil that can't be stirred down, I'm going to set a timer for 1 minute. Because that's what it needs for the reaction. The cooking of the sugar needs to react with the pectin. So you saw as soon as I added that sugar, it turned a lovely dark color because now it is diabetes. That's what makes it taste good. So we're just going to wait. I'm going to turn my flame as high as it'll go because we're not really looking to cook the fruit down anymore. We're just looking to dissolve that sugar and get that chemical reaction with the pectin. While we're waiting, I'm going to explain a little bit of the canning process to you. So I have over here my sanitized jars already and a pot of boiling water. So when you're looking to can things to preserve them, as in not have to put it in the fridge, it'll last on the shelf for as long as you want it to. Excuse me. You're looking to eliminate as much bacteria as possible. And to do that, you need to sanitize your jars. So I've already done that for you because it's a bit of a boring process. You don't want to see that. You wash your jars just like soap and water, rinse them, anything like that. And then with a pot of boiling water, you're gonna, a rolling boil, you're gonna put them in there for 10 minutes. And that heat from the boiling water is gonna eliminate any bacteria that you have. That includes the rings and the actual lids of them. And sanitizing the lids of the jars is actually what softens the rubber, I suppose, because that's what creates your seal once we can them again. On your home stoves, if you ever want to try this, they're going to be pretty similar to this. The flames in our fancy high-tech kitchens are a bit higher and cook things a bit faster. It's really important that you stir constantly when you're making the first part and this part because you don't want the sugar to burn and you don't want the fruit to burn on the bottom or the edges of the pot. You can't even really leave it alone for just a second, and that's why we had my lovely assistant. And this is going to go great, as I think most of you have already had with our sourdough bread. It sucks we don't have my grandmother's spoon. Oh my goodness. So my friend Jacob over here, I gave him a part of a batch of our yearly jam that I make with my grandmother every summer. And unfortunately, he dropped one and broke it. And he was really excited for it. He was all out of jam. And he calls me and he's like, I would just love for Yvonne to give me another thing of jam. Like, if she can spare it, pretty please. So I call her and I'm with him and I'm like, can I have your recipe? Can I have some tips so I can make him like another jar of jam? And she goes, well, you can try. I can give you the recipe, but you know, Josie, it's not going to be as good. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, do you not believe in me? What am I doing wrong? I think I can make the jam. I made it with you, you know? And she's like, you don't have Granny Mother's spoon. It's just not going to be as good. I don't know what to tell you. And she's right. Okay, so we've got that rolling boil, and with that sugar, this is molten lava, y'all. So I'm going to start my 1 minute timer, and I'm going to keep stirring. And she is right. I don't know what it is, but that crack in that spoon, it makes it delicious. And when we're canning these jams, they have such a high sugar content that the canning process really helps preserve them. That sugar helps preserve them. But I think it's important to understand that if you're canning pretty much anything else, you have to use a pressure canner because the acidity and the sugar content is different. And there are guidelines online that you can find for that. But for anything with a high enough sugar content like jam, the method that I'm going to be showing you is perfectly fine. So you see all that foam that you see right there, it would be like quadruple that amount if we didn't put that butter in there. All right, and as soon as my timer goes off in about 5 seconds, I'm just gonna kill the heat and we're gonna start filling our jars. Alrighty. So that's jam. The thing about its setting is it's gonna take overnight. I'll show y'all. So since I sanitize these jars, it's really important not to touch the inside of them because the bacteria from your hands is what can cause botulism and other bacteria to grow and it not be shelf stable anymore. So while it's hot, this is easier with a jar funnel or any funnel really. I'm just going to fill the jars up, and where you fill the jars up is important too because the canning process actually eliminates any air that's in there. It creates a vacuum. So if you leave too much space, it's not going to as effectively eliminate the air inside the jar and therefore not make it shelf stable. Now this recipe, which is available for y'all if you want it, will make about 12 of the smaller jars. These are the quart jars, I believe. And this will make like 12 pint or half pint jars. And this uses the 1 package of powdered pectin, and it's really hard to shrink that down. You can double it, you can triple it, you can do whatever, but using less than a package of pectin, it's just not going to set the same. I don't recommend it. So I'm filling it right about to the bottom ring, like thread of this jar, because I also don't want to overfill it because when it's creating that vacuum and it's sucking that air out, it could end up exploding in my canning pot. So I'm just going to do these 3 for us. All right. And then I'm going to get my rings. The rings, even though I sanitize them, it doesn't matter. It's not touching any of the actual jam, so bacteria doesn't matter. But I am going to be very careful not to touch this part of the lid. So I'm going to add it there. This brown part, I suppose, that you see is actually what's creating the seal on the can once we boil it. The heat makes it soft, and then it'll create the vacuum, like I said, and then that'll seal it as if it were vacuum sealed, things like that. And I'm adding this ring for it to go in the canning pot because I don't want the lids to pop off of them. But it's actually a misconception that they should be stored with this ring on there. If you can something, you should store it with just the lid, just like that on there, because that's going to show you whether or not it popped off in storage. If you have the ring on there and it pops off, it could have botulism or other bacteria in there, and you'll never know because the lid wasn't able to come off and show you that it was bad like it's supposed to do. So using a pair of tongs, maybe, or my hands, I'm gonna carefully, all right, some of my water boiled out, but for our purposes, it's fine. You want your water at a rolling boil and you want it about 3 inches above the jar that you're canning. And again, because of the high sugar content, I'm only gonna leave them in there for about 10 minutes. And then I'm gonna show you on this empty jar. I don't know if you can hear it. That's the button on the jar. So once you boil it and I will take these out and set them on this thing, on this towel, and you cover them overnight. And if you listen at the right time, you'll hear that button pop. That is what's telling you that it canned properly and it's sealed. So if you ever have a can that you can do this and you can hear that noise when you do the button, it is not canned properly and it's not sealed. But those are gonna go for 10 minutes and then they're shelf stable, like I said, for up to a year or longer. And that's gonna be strawberry jam and sourdough bread.